a hairstylist with an obsession for horror films. This is our conversation with our good friend, Jill Gevargizian. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Eric Havens. This is the Nightmare Hour podcast. Hi, Eric. How's it going?
Good, great. You did great with the last name.
As we will soon discover, people don't always do great with that. This conversation is probably unlike many others you'll ever hear from us because we've known Jill quite personally for a very long time. So, yeah, it's just kind of us hanging out, and we get sidetracked a couple of times, but this was a fun hour.
It was really good. Like Jill and I haven't had much like hang time. Like we talk a lot, we text a lot about the movies and stuff, about progress and all that stuff. So we talk via text a lot, but we haven't, pandemic and all and everything else and busyness. I haven't really got to sit with her for an hour and just hang out and chat. So it was lovely. I hope everyone enjoys it.
Yeah. Well, we won't delay because this is over an hour conversation. So let's just get right into it.
As you can see and hear, we'll see and or hear, I guess, depending if you're on our YouTube channel or our podcast thing. We have Jill here with us. Look at her. She's got her glasses up and down. I'm just gonna do like the descriptions for the whole podcast portion. I'll describe everything she's doing.
Just Jill, Eric? Is that how you're gonna introduce her?
Sorry.
We have Jill here, our friend Jill. You know
sorry.
her.
I forget everyone doesn't know her.
Great.
You want to take over? You want to redo it?
No, you did a great job.
Okay.
Jill.
But as you can see from behind her, from all the scalps and artwork, she is the director and co-writer and co-producer and all around everything on The Stylist. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you for having me. So great to meet you guys.
Okay, we have to get
we're best friends forever.
Yeah, we have to get it out of the way. We've known Jill for eternity, so
I don't know how to. Yeah, my heart sucks.
Eric can't do a heart shape at the camera, but and Jill, of course, not only has done The Stylist, she is the owner of Six Tape Productions and has done a ton of things from music videos to other short films and hopefully other features soon. So, thanks for joining us and hanging out on this whatever day this is. I don't even know.
It is Thursday.
Oh, okay. Thank God somebody has a calendar here. Eric and I exist in a windowless room every time we're on this podcast.
Yeah, look at
he's in a blank void.
I'm a void.
All right, let's go. Let's get in the way back machine, everybody, and discover who Jill is as a person and where you grew up and what was the first moment you remember truly falling in love with movies, not even wanting to make movies, just like the movie you saw maybe as a kid and you're like, oh man, what is this magical thing? So who are you? Where did you grow up? And then that first magic moment that kicked it all off for you.
Who am I? That's too.
Is that like an existential question, or?
Yeah.
Well, we need you to record. We need you to record saying, pronouncing your last name, so we could upload it to Google. So when people butcher it on every podcast, they can just Google it and then they'll play it, and it'll be you phonetically saying it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
My name is Jill Gevargizian, and no diss to all those podcasters because they practice it, they say it right, and then we press record and then they say it wrong. It's like it won't happen right when we press record.
I put the wrong emphasis on a long time. Like I mispronounce it. I get it right, but I do the wrong emphasis like on the words. So it's hard.
Happens.
Yeah.
Or they turn it into more of an Italian sounding name in some way. But how did I fall in love with movies? I guess the first movie that comes to mind is The Land Before Time. And I loved how emotional that made me as a very little child. I was actually excited by the idea that a movie could make me cry. I don't know if that makes me very morbid as a child. So I actually would seek out movies that could make me cry from then on. And I think then that kind of connected to when I discovered like horror or scary stories, like through Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is probably the first thing. Just like art that had a powerful emotional effect on you, whatever direction that might be, is kind of, I think, what hooked me.
I think it's incredible that dinosaurs can make us cry. I like the storytelling of it, because I agree with you. There's like this magic of telling stories, and like that kind of exemplifies how out of ourselves the art can like make us. Like it can be a dinosaur and we can relate to it. It can be like someone from a different country, someone from a different background, gender, like sexual roles, anything. If it's a story, we can apply ourselves to it and we feel those emotions. And I think that's the magic of storytelling in movies, really.
Well, and Land Before Time is an interesting one because it's a not Disney film that is horribly upsetting. I mean, the entire film is. I don't. That was one I avoided actually as a kid because I remember just being so wrecked the first time I saw it that I didn't want to return to that experience. But you're right. The emotional roller coaster, I guess, that you discovered as a kid, inevitably would connect you to genre films later on, and those same emotions, big and small.
Well, and while we're gonna make this whole thing about Land Before Time is my plan, but while that movie has like very sad moments, it's ultimately about like having like dealing with grief and still going forward and finding hope. So it's like ultimately like an incredible film, like about hope and grief. And then I discovered as an adult, I didn't know who wrote these things as a kid, but that Don Bluth, he at least wrote all these films. I don't know if he was a director. I should know this by now, but he did also An American Tail and All Dogs Go to Heaven. So he's making all these films about like very emotional stuff and loss. And I loved American Tail as well. Loved that movie.
Yeah, me too. I'm just singing the song in my head right now.
Oh my God. The mouse singing Somewhere Out There is too much to handle.
So Land Before Time is your first like connection as a kid where it feels like more than just images going into your eyeballs and you actually feel something. There's something that resonates. Is there I guess the next step would be like the more adult or it doesn't even have to be a horror film, but the next step is like the adult film that maybe made you feel like, you know, for me, it's Back to the Future. And I'm like, this movie doesn't feel real. It feels like a movie. And I'm just enamored with how it's created and the effects of it all. And it blew my mind when I was like 9 or 8 or whatever, probably younger. I'm like acting like I saw that movie for the first time at 9. Do you remember that film? Like, is there another one that was like, okay, that they are being made by somebody?
That's interesting. So I don't know when I started to think about how it happened, you know, or like the people behind it. Makes me think of, I watched E.T. all the time as a kid because we had it on a VHS taped off of TV. Was that the original stealing movies? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, as long as
at least we didn't share them with thousands of people or millions like they do now when you rip something. But was definitely fascinated by the magic in that movie. But I don't know when I started to think about who made films, honestly, because I didn't start paying attention to directors till I was probably an adult.
Do you remember the first, I guess the first director you did pay attention to, even as an adult, that you're like, oh, I know this person's name and I want to see what else they have?
Probably Aronofsky. How can I say his name right? When I saw Requiem for a Dream, that film at probably like 15 or 16, blew my mind because it was like I'd already been watching lots of horror, but it was like this drama that was more horrific than most horror movies in the world, as most people know that have seen it. That's one that's I watched it quite a few times when I was a teenager. I don't understand how, if we were just masochistic when we were younger, because I haven't watched it in so long, and just thinking about it is painful. But to discover that a film could go to that kind of a place and was also so artistic, that really inspired me to kind of dive deeper into more independent and weirder stuff. I was like going to Blockbuster every weekend by myself and like looking for independent films. This is before I knew where to find really independent stuff.
Yeah. And there wasn't like an independent section. Nothing had a label on it. You're like, I have to go to the, you know, you don't know what you're really getting, and the box art was good. But Aronofsky is an interesting one because looking at your work, that actually might be a bigger influence than I ever thought about to your career. Like just that your goal is to kind of emotionally wring people, and that's what he does through human experiences in different ways, is to put you through a ringer of sorts and to make you feel something.
Oh my God, yes. That movie is so hard. Black Swan is like a child's story in comparison, still very challenging.
I mean, and Pi makes you want to throw. When I think about Pi, it's just a dizzying experience of like manicness, and I just want to throw up. It just makes me anxious thinking about Pi. But Requiem for a Dream, the same thing. It's the movie they should show in every high school.
Yeah, but they don't need like a
Especially that.
drug thing anymore. A dare program. Just show that film one time.
Just title it Ass to Ass.
Yeah, well, just like this experience of like addiction and like that it doesn't affect. I think when you go to school, you know, you're like only hobos, or if you smoke weed once, you're going to be a homeless person, and it's so derogatory and so mean spirited towards those types of people. You know, people are less fortunate. And it's fully untrue. And I think Requiem for a Dream does a good job showing people of wealth falling down the ladder because of their own addictions, which I guess we can talk about later when we get into the Stylist, because I think that might tie in a little bit. But so you started discovering independent film off of Requiem for a Dream, which was probably been like 2000, 2001, somewhere in that time frame, early 2000s. Yeah. And then where did that take you from there?
But weirdly, rewind, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which is like 97, is inspired everything in my life. Not just my like every film I feel like I've made in some small way or big way. It also immediately, I wanted to be Claire Danes. I was like 12 when I saw it, and filled my room full of like angel figurines and candles, and like started this obsession with a religious art and iconography, to where you'd think I was a stout religious person if you saw half of like the decorations I have just in my own house. But it's really just, it started with Romeo and Juliet. And yeah, even as me and my best friend saw it 10 times in the movie theater the year it came out, every day at the same time, our winter break in 7th grade. we went to like when it went down to like a different, I don't know if it was the dollar theater, but it was definitely a little bit cheaper. That's sad that thing doesn't exist anymore. Kids will never know.
The discount movie houses rule. But that's so wait, I must ask, because I love Romeo and Juliet, but my obsession with that movie, although it certainly ties into the aesthetics, might be more in the soundtrack of that film. That is my favorite Baz Luhrmann soundtrack. It is so entirely 90s, but also just like perfectly fit to that. So do you have any intention of bringing back soundtracks like they were in the 90s? Is that should be your goal as a filmmaker, because they don't do them anymore.
I would love to. You need real budget, big budgets to have soundtracks like that, because songs cost a lot of money.
You don't think Radiohead would just give you a song?
Yeah, I'm just gonna call up Mr. York. And what was really cool about I would say that like could compete with like one of the best soundtracks ever. A lot of people will call out that and The Crow from the 90s specifically, but a lot of those songs were written for that movie, or they weren't released on any other albums. Like that Radiohead song wasn't on any of Radiohead's albums back then. Everclear song is like literally about Romeo on there. It's so many great songs. But that lined up with my love of like sad stories, like the ultimate tragedy, and I love the the aesthetics, how it mixed like old Gothic theatrical stuff with modern, like the church scene with the neon crosses. Like I love Baz Luhrmann has such a unique style that's kind of carried on in a lot of his stuff.
But that's certainly my favorite of his films. It's a shame that movie is not available on like a 4K version right now, and that who knows with Disney owning it if it'll ever be.
What?
Yeah, Disney owns it? It's a Fox movie. It's a Fox joint, unfortunately, but that movie is great. Or I would be showing it all the time. I'd show it every year because that movie is unbelievable.
Well, we need to start a campaign for this 4K restoration.
Yeah, release Romeo and Juliet for like a big petition. I'm sure we'll get 500,000 signees. Okay, so well, this is great. We're doing a good job, I think, of putting the blocks together here,
Yeah.
because it's all going to relate. You're mentioning style and substance and tragedy, but you haven't really talked too much about all the crazy horror that lies behind you. So when do you start discovering?
I'm a liar. I actually don't like horror movies at all. No.
I've never seen a single one. When do you really discovering proper, I guess, what people would consider horror films, and what are some of those big ones that I guess maintain with you still today as your favorites?
Yeah, I started watching them way too young, like a lot of us did, which is vital to the experience. Not that I think parents should let their kids do it. That's not what I'm suggesting anything. But I would go stay with one of my best friends who lived on the other side of town, because I moved across town as a kid. And when I'd stay with her, we would rent whatever the hell we wanted at like 10 years old. So we started watching horror movies then. And I remember, especially from that time, watching Candyman, which is still one of my favorite movies. Still, if I see Tony Todd at a horror convention, I'm terrified. I'm like whispering, "That's Candyman." He is Candyman, like in real life to me. But also, I remember watching Dr. Giggles at that time, and an obsession developing, but then especially in middle school, going crazy when Scream came out. It was like spoke to us at our age. And it feel like it also kind of taught me about a lot of the classics, because there's, a million references to so many movies in there. I actually remember finding a website back when websites took 20 minutes to load, that someone had made this list of all the references within the film, like very obscure things I wouldn't have known at 12 years old. So I was like, use that as this like epic list. I'm like, I need to go watch all of these movies now. This is how I become like an aficionado on this. But so like in that time, I took it seriously. I had like lists of films, and I have my mom like drive me to multiple stores to try to find them, because that was what was so hard. Like, how the grocery stores would have rental shops in the front. You have to go to like all the different ones. Sometimes you'd find a rare movie.
Terror Train.
Yeah. I went around a lot trying to find When a Stranger Calls. I was so excited about finding that, because I loved the story within Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That legend is in there, the babysitter, which I learned that was an old urban legend from way before the book. They put it in the book, and then One Missed Call, or I mean, not One Missed Call, totally different movie. When a Stranger Calls is based on that same legend. And I became obsessed with that whole thing and trying to find it. And then the lead character's name is Jill. I am weird and think things have mean something, but I do remember specifically driving around forever to find that film. And then watched it recently. It's great.
Oh yeah, the original. Actually, yeah. I think most versions of that movie are pretty good. The best probably being the one that nobody considers, but Black Christmas is that movie.
Yes.
Ultimately, yeah.
Ultimately, spoilers for Black Christmas. Not any of the remakes, but so yes, Scream.
Are they the first to do the phone call thing, which is
I
huge.
think so, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's another one that would be
when
American
Black Christmas, like 76 or something.
74.
74.
So it's got to be.
So.
Yeah, it's got to be. Because cell phones or phones came out in 1970, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Alexander Graham Bell of 1970. Yes.
Alex Bell. Of course. So Scream, like me, that was my obsession at the same as yours. I'm sure we were on the same GeoCities website, just like, no, the list is still coming. It says under construction. I need this complete. But it was a difficult time.
Or the Angel Fire websites, which I think I made one of those, at least one of those.
We all made. I think, I went from GeoCities, and then of course they didn't have what I needed. So I went to excite.com. Because I didn't want to be on Angel Fire for some reason. I don't know. Anyways, sidebar on that. But so Scream really set you off on the kind of the teen slasher journey, which I think a lot of us go through in that middle school time frame, because it's movies with us in them, right?
Yeah, I learned later in life, because I'm a huge Chainsaw fan, which we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. That
when did you see that for the first time? And do you remember that
I
experience?
honestly don't remember the first time, which really makes me mad. Like it's like my favorite movie, and I don't remember the first time I watched it. What's wrong with me? But I learned in recent years, I don't know if it was from Joe Bob when he did a showing of it on Shudder, but that Chainsaw is the first horror movie about teenagers, so this all connects. And that's a really, because it is before Black Christmas, technically, I guess. But that it's interesting to think that horror movies about teenagers didn't exist before Chainsaw.
Well, yeah, and I guess like even Black Christmas, they're presumably college students, so they might be in their 20s. Like,
yeah.
Texas Chainsaw is really about kids on a road trip. And you don't really, I'm struggling to think of a true movie that doesn't just have a character doing something, but is all about those characters. And you're probably right. Not till like the late 70s do you see that replicated as real characters, not just young people being killed. That's interesting.
Like before that, all horror was adult, and it's kind of once it started, teen kind of became the majority probably for a while, or definitely about young 20s and below.
Yeah, that film is, it's obviously one of the classics, but I haven't seen it, and it's one that I absolutely love, one of my all times, obviously, but it's not a casual watch for me. I don't watch it. It's not one I do even every year. But I do remember my first experience and how fucking scared I was watching that movie, because everywhere you looked on the internet in 96 or 97, it was like you would see that like mentioned, and it was just like how they would describe the film as this like low budget, grimy, feels like a documentary, and based on a true story, all that stuff set up for when I was inevitably saw it at like 10 or 12 or something. And it starts the first 5 fucking minutes of that movie. I'm like, I don't think I can watch this movie. This movie is fucked. It is just, and then it never stops being that way. Like it's uneasy and grimy, but it's also like, as you watch it as an adult, you're like, man, it just works on like this totally different visceral level of reality.
I think it's the first horror movie I ever saw that I realized how powerful horror could be as like an allegory with like undertones of things and thematic things, because to me, and I mean, I think Tobe Hooper's even said it, like it's a movie about like vegetarianism and like the stuff, like that line, the meat packing and all of that, and the parallels between the beginning talking about the cows to the ending when it's almost directly the same scene, even when they're like doing things and there's like pig squealing and stuff in that final scene. Like it's just like powerful stuff. Yeah, it's grimy and it's scary and it's terrifying, and it's a simple little cheap movie that's really well made. But it was the first thing I remember seeing where you're like, this is about something more than teenagers getting stuck in the woods and some scary person coming after them. And that was huge for me. So
yeah, I think Eric, he actually, like, it was somehow more of an allegory for the war and how carelessly we were just sending people to die.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I've always taken that vegetarian thing too. I'm like, I don't know if he had, like, if it was a comment intentionally on that, but it's like impossible to not read into that. It's like Frank describes how they kill cattle. The rest of the kids in the car or van are like, we don't want to hear that. Like, that's like, we'd rather ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And then they all proceed to be killed in that exact way and eaten. So it's like, how is that not a thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think that's another thing that's fascinating. And I guess we can ask you this as somebody who contextualizes specific things in their films, but then there's always stuff that people pick out that you didn't intend. And then, Eric, I think you were the first one to really tell me like the animal cruelty and vegan aspects of Texas Chainsaw, because I'd always thought it was a war thing. But it blew my mind. I was like, oh, well, yeah, certainly that is what this movie is about. But and so it works, twofold. I guess when you look to make your films, there are certainly two types of films that are just popcorn and don't really want to have a conversation. They want to be pure escapism. But I think by and large, most movies have something underneath them. Even big films, I think the best big films have those. And most of these films we're talking about have something further they want to add to a conversation with us as humans. How important, I guess, is that to you as a filmmaker and having your voice, your ideas, and starting conversations with the audience?
It's very important. I definitely feel that way about the stuff that I've been part of writing, and even more so, I'm concerned about that when I read something that I'm considering maybe to come on as a director, that if I just know how hard it is to make something, how long it takes, and how it might not ever happen. So if there isn't something I'm incredibly passionate about it involved in what's going on, or which normally connects to what the film is saying underneath it all, or not even a direct message, but something that's hoping to start conversations or just to make people think, that's maybe one of the most important things to me. But I do love to watch films that are just, for escapism. So I don't know if I feel like that if I would make something that isn't just fun, like a lot of the films I grew up loving. But I feel like almost everything has something to say, even when it does seem like it's just popcorny fun. I don't know.
Think it is, yeah. I think it always does. Like, people bring themselves to a movie, so there's always something where you can pull some idea out of.
Talk to me about the metaphors behind Fast Five.
I've never seen Fast Five.
I kid. I mean, but you're right. I think every
is that
something
Fast
about
and Furious
family,
5?
right?
Yes, Fast Five.
Something about the importance of family, of where you can find them. How about that?
Every one of those movies about family. Yes,
Yeah.
you are correct.
Yeah. So, boo to you, Adam. Fast and Furious is a message about family and caring about the people in your life.
It's discovering the extended family you didn't even know you had. The enemies might even be your family. One could argue is the metaphor behind 9 films of Fast and Furious.
Wait, it's about how far you can jump a car from one building to the next.
And that's a metaphor about your life, right? How you could either maintain the road in front of you, or you can go off-road and jump over
make a leap.
Or it could be about technology separating
leap.
us. It could be about like technology separating us and bringing us together at the same time, like through these vehicles. Yes, it's fast. Yes, it's furious.
Yes.
But how you deal with that, your choice.
This is going to be turned into our
Too Furious,
our side podcast, dissecting in depth what the Fast and Furious movies truly mean.
Can we start a whole side podcast, a series where we go through each film and discuss them in intense detail?
Like one, each.
I've only seen maybe
gets...
the first, and then I saw the one that James Wan directed, because I think that's when Paul Walker passed away. So I was like, I'm gonna go see James Wan's version of Fast and Furious, of course.
I don't think I've seen one.
They're all good, harmless, fun movies. I enjoy them. I enjoyed the ride.
Ha.
Okay.
This is in the podcast. Let's okay. So I think we've got a good understanding of your foundation, and that leads us to the creation of your first thing, which is Slaughter Movie House. So briefly tell us about what that is, and how that became.
Yes, Slaughter Movie House is a monthly screening series we started in 2012 in Kansas City, and I had actually just attended my first horror convention, or actually it was my second horror convention, Texas Frightmare Weekend, and just the whole experience blew my mind and changed my life to meet this whole horror community. I don't know why I didn't go to these things as a teenager. I would have probably combusted of excitement. But there I watched quite a few of the independent films and met the filmmakers, and that's when I realized that real people made movies. That was when this dawning came to me. But I came home and I was so inspired by all of it that I wanted to figure out how to be involved, and I had put on some events. I was interested in doing that. So my friends at Czar Bar were wanting a movie night, and it just made sense to start it. So I just jumped in, only having a couple films to start. Eric actually helped to come up with names for it. And it was actually like through that I was inspired to like go kind of like get on other people's sets and experience what it was like behind the scenes, and started programming short films there. And that led us to Eric's script, Date Night, which became Call Girl. Am I going to keep rambling? Should we say something more here? I can keep going.
I think they tie in flawlessly.
Yeah. We were first only showing features at Slaughter, and then I discovered short films. I was like, holy shit, like people can make things that look like they were $1 million films at like 5 minutes when they're people who don't have millions of dollars. And so I was really impressed by that and loved just the form itself and how you could have these little punchlines or scares in such a short time. And then Eric had the script Date Night that he was wanting to make, and I was like, heck, I want to help produce it. I don't know what that means, but let's figure it out. Eric was going to direct the film.
Yeah. What started that way? I think we were like a month into pre-production or so. It was me as the director. And then I just really realized what my personal strengths and weaknesses were. And I felt like an ulcer forming, and I was just too afraid. So I came to Jill and asked if she'd want to direct. And I don't remember her exact response, but it was basically a hell yes. And then we basically like regrouped after that and kind of went a whole new direction with it. That was her vision, and glad we did, because it was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot together, and we had an amazing cast that Jill put together from her adventures and the horror conventions and stuff that she's talking about. So it was incredible.
Well, that's, I think for people who maybe don't know your whole journey and just how quickly it all kind of happened, really, like from never even really being on the set to directing your first short, and how short of a timeline that really was. And I think how inspiring that can be, in a time when anybody can really make a movie. You don't hear often that journey, how quickly you could, if you have a vision or if you're gung-ho enough, right, that you can really put the pieces together and do it. And that's one thing I think you're going to hear like from this point out, is that Jill's just going to do whatever she says she's going to do, even if it's really fucking hard. She's just going to do it.
Yeah. Follow Jill is what I've found in life. If she says something, say yes and follow her.
Oh my gosh. Call Girl, well, at first once it started going, it was fast, but I think we first started talking about it a year prior to shooting it. When it came down to casting Lawrence Harvey, people know from like the Human Centipede franchise. It was actually a weird thing. I actually just sent it to him for his like thoughts on the script. I wasn't asking for him to be in the film. I think I was way too intimidated by that idea, or would even consider it. And he wrote us back and was like, I love this. I want to play the man. And we're like, oh, what? Okay. I was really intimidated by that, like to the point where I didn't even know if I wanted to do it, because I just didn't know if I could handle the nerves. Somehow I got to the point where I realized I'd be crazy to not take that opportunity, work with someone with that much experience and who I already was a fan of as an actor. And then it was really through him that we found Tristan. It was over a summer, like 3 months until we shot. Once we decided that, we want to work with Lawrence. Actually, I got to meet up with him in LA while he was filming Centipede 3 that summer. And at the same time, American Mary was making its premiere in LA, which was all my planning to come out at the same time. Yeah. But we got to meet the Soskas and Tristan that night. And then that led us to asking her to play Mitzi in Call Girl. And so then it was just like this dream scenario. I was working with two people I felt very intimidated by. But I learned through that that's the way to do it, to work with people that are super talented and experienced. And then I just learn from everyone I'm working with each time. And I remember opening up to Tristan about it the night before we shot, how nervous I was. And she was like, well, think of it like this, like we're all here, we're all here for the same purpose, and we're all here to make this the best thing possible. No one is no one's judging how you're, approaching this. And she just, whatever she said to me that night was like, just like completely calmed me down. And but once we shot that film, I was addicted. I was like, when can we make something else? And we started, I think, writing a Stylist together after that.
Yeah.
The short.
But you also, I mean, I guess in your timeline were you doing the Stylist as Call Girl was fully done? Because that movie played the entire world. Call Girl did, and so did the Stylist eventually. But Call Girl had like a year of touring, I feel like.
And I
Yeah.
feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I think before we started the Stylist short, we were actually starting the Call Girl feature script that never really got off the ground. But I think I remember being at festivals and conventions and stuff on my laptop working on the feature while we were touring with it.
I have the first note. I have these like first notes of the Stylist idea. Actually, I wrote them down before we filmed Call Girl. It was like winter of 2013. And we released Call Girl in March of 14. So I think like I first wrote these ideas down, and then we came back to them when I was like, I want to figure out how to make this into a story. I wanted it to be a feature like from the jump, but I knew there's no way I was going to try to direct a feature that soon. So it just seemed like something that made sense that we could tell in a short and then expand on the character into the feature.
So Call Girl gets made. Call Girl plays, like, as I said, every festival. You tour for a year long. And then what?
Stylist was a long, crazy process, the short film, because we shot it in the beginning of 2015, but we didn't release it until summer of 16. So we were in post-production for over a year on a short film. We learned a lot. But what's confusing about that is, but in the meantime, I had shot and released a short film called Grammy and another short film that was part of the Soska Sisters Blood Drive. So we were making little things in the process of Stylist being in post for that long. And then really not until after Stylist was finally, actually right after we shot Stylist, we started to write the script. I knew it needed to be ready. And then we just blew it and didn't start writing it again until this short was done. Which we had lots of interest in, like, is this a feature? Like, people could tell that was the hope. And I was kicking myself for like months that it wasn't ready. It's like I wasted so much time just being upset with myself that it wasn't ready. We could have been working on it during that time.
Yeah, I got that same feeling in those meetings. Just like, I mean, I'm so happy with where we ended up, but you couldn't help but feeling like a little like, oh, we blew it. Like after having the meetings we had and stuff when they're asking that, and we didn't have anything to put in front of them at that point.
Yeah.
So I remember that feeling, but it also, there's a happy ending.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I learned. In general, you have to figure out how to be prepared for like the best case successful situation, whatever that could mean. But then in hindsight, we got to make the movie we wanted without any powers that be being involved in the creative stuff. So I think now I'm not upset that I was slacking for all that time, I guess. I don't know.
Happy ending.
Well, so that's a
lesson is don't do the work. No, I'm kidding. We should have done it.
But still, even though it seems like it might have taken, because you're like, oh, we were doing this in 2014, 15, and then the feature's just now coming out in 21. In the scheme of things, Call Girl was made in 2013, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a feature that's out in distribution in early 21. Like, that's really quick from never having made anything to I have a feature in wide international release.
It's
right? I mean, like,
I don't know.
I think yeah, it's hard to see, like, because it feels like so long, especially with this pandemic year. It feels like the longest, shortest year ever. But then you're not even a decade into your career, really, and you've already made a lot of stuff, and you have a feature which is of something that you did exactly your way, which could have gone a number of different ways.
It's a dream scenario. The whole thing is too much. Eric and I are texting each other about how we're crying about all these exciting things all the time.
Well, okay. So you made a number of shorts you mentioned. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of them are available in some way, shape, or form on different platforms for people to find.
Yeah. All of my main shorts, because a lot of them are tiny things that were part of those blood drives. They're not really films, are on Alter. But except for Grammy was part of for Crypt TV. And on Arrow Player, they added the Stylist short as a kind of a extra so that you can watch. We have like a dozen extras on Arrow Player, including like a selection of behind the scenes videos, the short film itself. So you can like watch the whole journey and how we made it all in this whole thing.
That's awesome. So we won't get fully into that because people should just go watch it and watch all that stuff. But that does lead us to, I guess, you had these meetings, Stylist wasn't ready, and you kept making shorts, but you realized that at some point, nobody was going to come knocking on your door to make this movie, so you had to do it yourself. Well, I guess in that same time frame, you had also gone to Fantasia with another potential feature. So I guess we can talk about that, and then what that turned into, and eventually led to you making the Stylist on your own terms.
Yeah, I was brought onto another feature project, like attached as the director to a feature that was written by Eric Stolz and was starring Bria Grant. So that's where I met those two. And I had known of Bria and her work since I was young. I watched Heroes, and just when I got the email about that project, I was like, what? This is too exciting. But that was something we worked on hard, and Stylist was kind of in the same process, like both films being sent out to potential production companies and financiers. But then that project is called Permanent Address. It got into Frontiers, which is a market where you get to pitch your film in front of all these, like all the industry in the room at the same time. It was a really awesome experience. We made a trailer for it. And really ever since I met Bria, I just kept picturing her as Olivia because she has so much of her, who I thought she was in her real personality. And not to mention, I just wanted Bria to be in our film family, and I wanted to work with her. I've been trying to work with her on the other movie for so long. And so we went to Frontiers, we got to pitch it, and 42 Counts, another short we made, was playing also at Fantasia. So I don't know, how did it lead to finally doing the Kickstarter? It was, I think, a mixture of having both those projects out there and trying, for that magical thing to come that the Duplass brothers say, that the Calvary isn't coming, that whole thing. And I kept getting reminded and inspired by that type of stuff, where I would meet filmmakers that would tell me how they made their first feature, and it was a matter of just doing it on your own. And in fact, like the guys from Low Life, when I met them at Panic Fest, they really, I'll never forget this conversation, because they were like, we had to start making it literally not knowing how we'd finish it, meaning like financially, like you can make the plan, but we don't know how we're paying for this plan yet. And what's always been holding me back is I'm like, I can't start something I don't know how I'm going to finish. But apparently that's kind of what you have to do. And it, like, I feel like sheer willpower makes it happen somehow. But my mom went through a really scary health scare situation, and that just opened my eyes again to how short life is, and time is like 1 second everything changes, 1 second the whole world shuts down into a pandemic. But her going through that was just like, I'm freaking absolutely done waiting. I reached out to Robert Stern and Sarah Sharp, the main two producers from the Stylist short, and Najara Townsend, who plays Claire. I asked them, I'm like, what do you guys think about doing a Kickstarter? What's this? We got to figure out the smallest amount of money we can make this movie for. Like, Kickstarter will just be a percentage of our budget, and we go from there. And I was like, if they say, these three people say yes, I felt like we can figure it out. Like, I had this like confidence that from then on we'd figure it out. And that was it. I was very nervous though, that especially Robert and Sarah would be like, Jill, like this practically we can't do this. We need a certain, it's not a film that's written for small budget. You guys know, like a lot of small budget horror is in one location with only like 3 to 5 actors max. And this is like 15 locations, a shitload of characters. So it's just, I understood it once I started to break it down like a producer. I never had done that. I don't understand why till I got to the Kickstarter phase or thinking about doing one. And once I listed all the locations and characters, I was like, okay, how many of these can we remove and it still work? But it was just a matter of like time reminding me that it's too short. We've got to do this now.
Yeah, I remember when you went to Fantasia, that was summer of 2019. Is that right?
I think it was 18. Yes, 2018. Because 19 is the summer we decided to do the Kickstarter.
That's right. The timeline is weird because again, 2020 wasn't a real year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And then like how quickly you came back, you're like, well, maybe this is gonna go. And then your attention turning so, like you and Eric both just turning so hard into the Stylist just to have that ready. And then how quickly you jumped into the Kickstarter and pushed it. And just like, I mean, that was your full-time job for 60 plus days, is just hitting your Kickstarter goal. And I remember just like, I mean, for people listening, it wasn't an accident that got funded and this movie got made. It was a lot of, I mean, Jill put in a lot of hours and time, and that was all 7 years in the making to get to the point to put those hours in to raise the funds. But it is still like essentially like you with the help of a lot of people, but you as the captain of the ship led the Kickstarter to a success and was able to get the film to the point where you knew you can make it.
Yeah, I did more research for this Kickstarter. We did Kickstarters for Call Girl and the Stylist short, but I did 10 times, 100 times more research for this than ever before because it was such an intimidating amount of money to raise. And so I went crazy and found specific other projects around the same budget that were successful, made all these spreadsheets of like their rewards versus other rewards and which ones are most people buy, and also made a detailed campaign for the like a PR campaign for the Kickstarter, because people get very sick about hearing about it for a month straight. You have to think of unique ways for it to be brought into people's minds without just here it is again, you know. So that, yeah, doing a Kickstarter is a humongous project on top of the project you're trying to make, which we're still working on. Like the Kickstarter goes until the movie's completely released in June, or at least until then. But yeah, it's so much. I get asked about Kickstarter a lot. It's so much goes into it because it is like something you have to build somewhat of a name for whatever you're doing. Or when you launch a Kickstarter, how will does anyone know about it already so that it can go somewhere? But it's a scary process.
Well, and I guess that leads us to, you were successful there. You made the film, you did it on your own terms. You grinded it out and you wrapped early 2020. Just as the Chiefs had won the Super Bowl and we were all partying and everything was great. And you'd wrap this tremendous film that you'd worked years on together. And then literally 15 days or so later, the city shuts down, the world shuts down. And we're now approaching that year mark since you wrapped production, since the world shut down, and the movie is now available internationally. But how was it to have everything stop when you had finally put all the pieces in place to make your first feature film? And typically, for the last 7 years, you had played the world and traveled with films, and that's probably what your anticipation was to do with this. But everything shut down. There was no film fest. There was no industry. What was going through your mind those first couple months as you sat into post-production with this movie and everything was closed?
A lot of scary thoughts. I had to start preparing myself, at least personally, for the idea that festivals weren't going to happen because everything was so up in the air at that point, especially. We knew, I think things got real serious. They canceled the Big 12 tournaments here, and then South by Southwest canceled only a couple of days before it was supposed to start. And I was talking to the producers saying we need to be ready for the idea that festivals aren't going to happen in person like at all this year. And what does that mean? Does that mean we want a different route, go a different route, or wait, or what are we trying to do? Post-production itself, like the beginning when we were, really locked down, March through May, was almost, for post's sake, a positive. Pandemic's not a positive. I don't want to make it sound like that, but it was like I couldn't go to my day job. So I had full time to focus on this. And it was almost like I needed it. I don't know how I would have been working and watch all these cuts and have meetings every couple of days about things. But I was, real bummed and anxious and worried about the festival situation. And then we started submitting to festivals in early June or late May of last year, even when those festivals we were submitting to, they're telling us that they don't know how they will happen or if. And so it's just like so many ifs. Didn't even know till we finally maybe got into a festival what was going to happen. And even I feel like some of those, like maybe Fantastic, when they first reached out to us, didn't know if they would be partially in person or not in person at all. I've been focusing on like all the positives and the silver lining with everything. But yeah, I did hope to be traveling to all these festivals, and I really put a lot of work into traveling to them with the short and creating all these relationships at festivals. And so if I can cry in the corner, I would be like, I wanted to go to all these festivals with my first feature, damn it. But also the positive of them being virtual, so many people could watch them. Like everyone in the United States could access the Fantastic Fest screening instead of just people in Austin. And I attended a lot of screenings at other festivals I wouldn't have been able to virtually. But then the downside of that is we could have played a lot more, regional type festivals. But because they're all virtual, all accessible to the same people, they're no longer regional. They're all basically the same festival just happening over and over. So we couldn't do nearly as many. But it's exciting. We're still actually going to play. There's still more festivals coming. I didn't talk about yet. Because of the pandemic, people are like bending a lot of rules because we don't live in the world we used to live in anymore. Like none of the old rules apply. So it's like a lot of festivals that wouldn't even consider us because we're already on Arrow, but like made an exception because of the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Well, that's I mean, we pretty much did an hour journey here, but it's just fascinating, I think. And it's one of those stories that had I been 13 and read the same story, it is the up and coming like person who did it themselves. People don't really talk about them as much as they used to, but in the early 90s, it was like Rob Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and Richard Linklater, all these people doing it their own ways, with very scrappy with their tiny little budgets, doing their own personal movies and finding their journey in. And yours is very similar to that, and how quickly you went from being a movie lover to somebody curating films to making films to a feature film internationally released. Like it's just such a quick time frame to have.
Should I write a book about it like Rodriguez?
Absolutely.
I mean, thought about it.
I mean, it's not a terrible idea because I mean, this is just the super quick version of everything. But and then all the things you learn around along the way. But I think for people that listen that have always had an interest in making movies, your story is a modern day version of yes, anybody can do it. You have all the tools at your disposal. You can raise funds now. Those guys, those filmmakers in the early 90s, even the 2000s, they didn't have a Kickstarter. They didn't have the ability to, be on streaming platforms worldwide or have these big festivals. Really that's a thing of the last 10 or 15 years. So it was great to hear your journey, I guess.
I'm thankful I didn't have to go do lots of, what did he do? Rodriguez did tons of like medical testing,
clinical
shit to
trials,
raise that
yeah.
money.
Yeah.
It sounded horrifying.
I did want to interject just because I've worked with Jill for, I don't know, almost a decade now, I think. Getting there. Like you're right, Adam. Like anybody can do this now, but I have to like sing the praises of Jill a little bit because she has that intangible like quality that anyone can, but very few of us do. Like I wrote scripts and did shorts and like I was working at this because I'm older than both of you. Like I was doing this before I met her, but she has like I said, I was kidding, but I'm not. Like you find the kind of people who have that intangible quality and you follow them because they have this. I don't even know how to describe it. This like passion, this skill, this like perfect conglomeration of what you need between like the business, the creative, the whole circle of making a movie. Like she has this drive that I've never seen in anyone I've met before, and it's just been an honor to like be able to contribute my creative stuff to it and like work with her and be able to trust her with everything and not get backstabbed, which just happened to me, but it's just part of the business too. Like someone you can trust who has that intangibleness and can like get shit done, for lack of a better phrase. Like anyone can, but Jill did. So that's what I wanted to say.
You're right.
I can't handle the flattery over here.
So take your vitamins and then grind it out. But yeah,
Find a Jill. That's really easy. If you want a movie made, just find a Jill.
but don't find Jill to make your movie.
Please don't.
She's
Talk
busy.
to me.
Well, speaking of where people can follow you, where can people follow your work or get a hold of you on social media?
You can find me at Jill6 with 2 X's on all the medias. Or go follow at the Stylist Film, please, at all the places, and sixtape.com, which I need to update. Speaking of which,
Is it still GeoCities?
no, I gotta go get a new Angel Fire site. Damn it!
Awesome. Well, this was a great conversation. Thanks for hanging out with us. I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else, Eric?
No, just more gratitude. Gratitude for all of us being able to be here.
This is Eric's new thing is ending the podcast. Just gratitude for this coffee. Gratitude for Jill for being here.
I still have vegan jerky.
Gratitude for vegan jerky. I'm thankful to both of you. Couldn't be on this journey without either of you, too.
Find your film family for sure if you want to do this. People you can trust.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jill. And everyone go watch The Stylist now on AeroPlayer. Go sign up, watch all the special features, fill in the gaps that we didn't cover, and then look forward to Jill's forthcoming book, which I don't know. I can't wait to know what it's called.
Oh, man. Now it's been announced. Got to write a book.
No pressure.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thanks.
Well, that was great. I enjoyed that. Did you enjoy your conversation with me and Jill?
I did. I felt like, I don't know. I felt very on this weird line because I'm a co-host, but I'm also a co-writer. So I didn't know when to step in and when to talk and when to ask questions. It was a little strange just being there, but you did a great job. I was really impressed with you. You looked dreamy and sounded sexy as hell. So
even more so.
It.
Well, that's the goal here is to hit all the functions. Be dreamy, be a great co-host, and interview people not awkwardly, which I think we've done. We were doing a pretty good job at. This was the most fun I think since we did the impromptu host chat.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know, they're all fun in their own way, but like I said at the end,
energy level, we were just like really jacked today. I was jacked.
Well, it's just like it's different. Like I said in the intro, like we were just hanging out with a friend, so like it had a different energy than a lot of interviews. So I had a lot of fun. I hope it's fun to listen to. I hope you all enjoy it out there. And next week, hopefully we'll have another guest, but we won't announce it again because schedules and times and conflicts, and too afraid to make promises that I don't want to break.
Yeah, I don't want you to break them. I don't want you to be in that position. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it. As always, you can get us at nightmarehourpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all the social medias at the Nightmare Hour Pod. Eric will be the one on the other side of the keyboard unless I decide and learn how to work a phone, but we'll see if I know how to do that. So the hour may be over, but the nightmare keeps ticking, Eric.
I love the new ones.
It is perfect. It was an accident, but it's perfect now.
So good.
All right, this was the Nightmare Hour podcast. Thanks for listening.
Take care of each other. Bye.